the last time you had a project that you were doing, and it's just hanging out there and hanging out there and hanging out there because you haven't figured out in your head yet how you're going to accomplish it or all the details to it. And that happens all the time. That's what buyers and sellers are experiencing in this kind of a market, in any kind of market that's changing. Is they don't really know. It's your job out there is to get out there and start educating them. So hopefully I'll give you a couple of tips to do that through this presentation. So that's all I want to say about that. All right, so you guys should have a handout. I've got one left here, so I need to have one. Let me start with kind of a summary of everything. I'm going to just kind of get right down to the point on this. Inventory has gone up a lot year over year. So inventory from January 118, 2,300 homes, and then just this last January, 3,351. That's a big deal. It's still not a lot of homes, but it is a big increase. When you get a 50% increase, that's a big deal. I think the other talking point is prices still went up. Like crazy, they went up, right? But we all experienced September and October and November. Was it a little strange?
Yeah.
A little different, right? Did you have some explaining to do if you had a listing that was kind of hanging on? Yeah, that sucks, right? To have that feeling with your seller going, oh yeah, I'm sure this will sell in 25 days. And then 45 days later, you're like, gosh, I haven't worked with a seller in 10 years where this thing is hanging on like this. So we have some new learning to do for sure. Wanted to show you the showing trends, and I've got a couple charts in here. We changed this chart recently because we used to do it always with showings per listing. And now when we've got a big increase in inventory, it's kind of hard to compare that with last year. Because with more inventory, obviously, you're going to have fewer or less showings per house. So it can kind of skew things. So these are the absolute showings here. February, this was just the 5th of February, I think, when we pulled this. So you need to take that with a grain of salt. We don't know what February is really going to do. You guys feeling pretty good about February showing activity? Anybody got listings? A little bit better? Yeah. But what we can see is in 2009, we had a kind of recession showings. And take a look at this December here. Our December in 2018 was pretty up. So, and September was off. And this is one that we kind of show all of them with the showings per listing. So are we in a bubble? What do you think? No. Yeah, question number one from your buyers and sellers, right? Oh, we're in a bubble. I don't want to buy right now because I'm not going to, my house is going to lose all its equity tomorrow, right? So this is a chart that you might just take a look at to help you through this question with your buyers and sellers. What we're really focusing on in this chart is, if you take a look at the years leading up to the last real estate recession and compare those to the last few years currently, and notice the differences. And the biggest difference is home building. There was a ton of home building done before then. And there hasn't been that much in the last 5. The other big difference is, you'll notice, is the jobs. How much employment we have now, job growth we have now, compared to that last recessionary period. So those are big indicators. And then people moving into the state. Look at the previous 5 years before the last recession. We had a net migration of 24,000 people during that entire 5-year period. Only 24,000 people net migration. So in the last few years, we've had what? 190,000 people net migration coming in. That's a huge difference. So if we've got less houses being built, and we've got a lot more people coming in, we've got good job growth here, we've got some great fundamentals for our real estate market. Yeah, we're going to probably see a softening in our market because prices are really high and people's wages haven't caught up to that, frankly, especially in the lower end. But we've got some fundamentals to kind of keep things, especially in our state, pretty healthy compared to some other localities across the nation. Do you guys agree with that? Yeah. The trick is to get your buyers and sellers to understand, right? It's one thing for us to say something, it's another for them to watch the news and go, oh my God, the sky is falling, real estate's terrible, I should just go live in a motorhome, right? I've become a minimalist now. So economic factors. Minimalist touch on the word. just did a closing 2 weeks ago at our north office where a couple sold their house for $440,000 to move into their trailer. And they were going to just drive around and like just kind of be minimalist in their trailer with their 2 kids. I couldn't believe that, 2 kids. They're under 7. They're so little. Not too little. But I thought it was really interesting. They're going to do that, and they're going to kind of drive around. And their hope is that their thought is they'll buy a house in a couple more years, and they think they're going to make money off of this. Like, oh, wow. Well, sure, you'll save on the payment, but you know that house is still going to appreciate over the next few years, and so you're kind of going to be screwed. But have fun with your trailer. All kidding aside, great couple, great family. They're really fun. They have a TV show there. They were doing the whole video and everything. Okay, so a little bit of history on our inventory. So let's go back to 2007. We're going to see, this is page 8. We've got your handout over here. Okay. 2007, we've got inventory levels really high, around 25,000 homes. And now we came down, of course. 2012, we started to really level out. So we've basically been in this super tight inventory. We're selling about what we bring on the market very quickly. Our months of inventory as of January was 1.2 months. What's a normal market? 5 to 6 months, yeah. So this is what our market's been looking like. We come down, and this is the months of inventory, historical. So we come down in the 2000s, we go up into kind of a buyer's market, and we had our recession. Obviously, that was a great time to buy some properties for people, especially. And then we come back down, and we've been in the seller's market for a really long time. If you look at some of the prior kind of seller's markets in the 90s, it kind of fluctuated, but we weren't in it for a real sustained period of time. And we've really been in this one for quite a while. And it's a crazy seller's market. It's not a normal seller's market. It's a crazy seller's market. And it's still like that. It feels weird now that we have a little extra time on market and we have to actually pay attention to pricing a little bit better. But it's nothing like a buyer's market. Okay? It feels like it might be. It's nothing like it. Okay? How many of you have been in the business for less than 4 years? Yeah, so what you've been experiencing is the reality of the last 3 years. Like, oh my God, if a house takes more than 2 weeks to sell, something's wrong. What do you think the average days on market is in the last 30 years? The average?
60.
75. 7. So the last really good seller's market in the 90s, what was it? 50. 50. So we have 25 days on market right now. We haven't had that kind of days on market in 50 years. Okay? So it's really weird. So your sellers need to understand that, yeah, things are going to change a little bit, but man, this is still awesome. All right. Here's the historical context, really, of just the home appreciation. I like this chart a lot, especially in this type of situation where you've got things changing, to show your sellers and your buyers, because they need some context, especially if they've only been in a house for the last few years. They need some context. A lot of buyers and sellers right now are telling you what? I'm afraid of a bubble. I'm afraid the prices are going to go down. How many days or how many years in the last 30, 40, I think it's 45 years. How many years in the last 45 years have we had a negative appreciation where prices go down?
5.
Isn't that crazy? It's in 4 years. So it's going to go down. It's probably not going to hang down there very long, just like it didn't in the last recession. It went down, and it went down a lot, but then it started to come right back up very quickly. So that kind of gives them some context. So sale concessions. This is something that's a really nice indicator of how the market starts to change too. When you're in a super tight inventory market where prices are high, and there's a lot of demand, people are willing to pay premiums to get into prices. So there's fewer and fewer concessions. Most of the concessions are kind of in the higher end in that type of situation. So this chart, I really like it because it's kind of a new one that we put together. It shows the sales with concessions over time for the last last several years, then you'll notice that we're inching upward, right? So now we're getting more sales with concessions. Still not very many. So I've got a few charts on this current market here. I want to kind of show you what to look at first. On this left-hand side, we've got the square footage of homes. So we've got smaller homes all the way down to larger homes. So, and then so you can see how many listings we've had, how many months of inventory, and the price change at each of those rates. This is important because this has really changed over the last year. So if you jump ahead to page 16, this is the one I really think is important for investors and first-time buyers. This is the opportunity right now that you need to be talking to buyers about.
Just so you know, your slide is like one big off of what we
It is.
look. So that is on page 15.
So is this 15?
Yeah, this is
Page
just
15. Okay.
pointing out pages on my.
I wonder what page I'm on.
It was one of the first slides.
Was it? Okay. Okay, so we got here the smaller to the largest, right? So they're by percentage this time instead of square footage. And the way we did that was above ground square footage. Just so you know. So if you look at 2016, and then 17, and then 18, and 19, okay? So we're looking across of all active properties. So what we've seen is in these smaller price points, look how many more homes there are available now and the end of 2018 versus 17 or 16. Huge difference, right, in the smaller homes. So if you've had a buyer last year that was super frustrated with the market and they couldn't buy a house, get them in the car, because this is an awesome time for them to go look for a house. There's actual inventory there. The other point is investors do the same thing. There are a lot of competition with investors in that price range, like 3-bedroom, 1-bath plays. And typically, the competition when you're doing that as an investor, looking to buy and hold, where does that competition come from? It's other owner occupants, right? They're hard to beat out because they're willing to pay so much more for that property that you're just not willing to pay for. Well, now we've got a lot more inventory. So investors and buyers, this is a great opportunity. So all of you guys that are thinking that this change in the market is gloom and doom, suck it up and get your investors and your buyers out looking at properties, because this is a great time for it. We haven't had a time like this to go grab buyers in 3 or 4 years. 3 or 4 years. It's like, Brandon, hey buyers, it's been 3 years since you've had an opportunity like this, and interest rates are still low. Let's get in the car and buy. Okay. Another thing that we put together, and this is part of a class that we had that's called Thrive in a Down Market, or a Changing Market. It's not really down yet. And so we're looking at some tools to educate buyers and sellers on as you're going through a changing market, what you need to kind of be pointing out to them. So hopefully they've got some guidance, they feel secure in the decisions that they're going to make, and the list of you and the buy. So this is one of them. And if you experience that painful listing in September or October this year, that hung on the market a while, you probably wish you had this slide in the listing presentation when they were trying to tell you to test the market. So your sellers are saying, well, my brother, he sold his house in 2 seconds last year for $1 gajillion over asking price. So we'd like you to start out high, and if it doesn't sell in a couple days, we'll lower the price. Right? A lot of people will say that. If it doesn't sell in a couple days, we'll lower the price. If it doesn't sell in a couple weeks, we'll lower the price. So this is a really good chart for them, because what we've looked at is days on market between 2015 and 2017. And this up here, the 60-day graph, that's when somebody needed a price adjustment. So it takes them almost 60 more days to sell a house if it needs a price adjustment. If it doesn't, it's selling super fast, bottom line, 15 days around, right? But if it needs a price adjustment, it's going to hang on the market. Really, really important for your sellers. This is a little bit of more detail in the days on market. And what this is intending to show, this is page 17, you guys over here. as the market turns into a seller's market, you get more premium, for the homes, as opposed to getting discounts. And so over the last couple of years, we've been floating right around for most of the mid-sized homes. Sometimes we're getting a premium, sometimes we're getting a slight discount. But usually it's a premium or about list, right? That's kind of how it's going. And that's what this is over here. You see it's right on top of that, right around the zero. It kind of fluctuates. Reason it's fluctuating is because it's quarterly. We take that quarterly. And we have different sales quarters. But what this means is you kind of have to be within a couple percent of what that house is ultimately going to sell for. If you're listing for higher than that, thinking that you're going to test the market, what happens is the buyers that are able to go look at properties for that house, they won't look at it. Or if they look at it, they'll completely discard it because they know the market so well because they've got all the tools that we do. They're looking at stuff all the time. And they go into these houses. And when they don't buy that house that first time it's on the market, then it hangs. So people that are trying to get real premiums right now, it's not a good idea to do that. So take a look at be really conservative with your comps when you're trying to list. A couple slides here for your first-time homebuyer people. Just want to explain this one so that you can explain it to your buyers. If you guys need any of these slides personalized to you, so that you can send it out to your sphere on social media or whatever, just let me know and we can do that for you. But what this one shows is it's a nice illustration to a buyer of, hey, if you wait till next year to buy, you're going to lose a ton of money over the next 20 years or 10 years. Yeah.
I posted this on Facebook.
Yeah.
This slide is amazing, and how you guys put it together is just hands down awesome. Because
Good.
it makes sense.
Good. Yeah. So let me just kind of explain it because some people look at the graphs and are like, what is going on with the graph? So if you buy at $250,000, the dark blue line there is the home value. Of course, it's going to go up. We're saying it's going to go up at 5%. That's because over the last 30 years, the home values have gone up more than six-ish. And then the blue line coming down, that's your mortgage. As you pay off your mortgage and the principal balance gets reduced. And then the bottom line, the light green line, that's the equity that you start growing in that property. So if anybody's ever done this calculation for a buyer, most of the time what you do is you calculate with the buyer, you calculate like what their interest rate, their payment might be next year with higher interest rates, which is a factor, but not that big of a deal, honestly. But what you don't, sometimes you'll calculate the additional down payment that they'll need. So they're going to need another 5% or 8%, next year, which is sizable. But what you don't really calculate usually is that extra year of equity build and appreciation build. And when that's kind of brought forward every single year, if you just run it out 5 years, it's a huge amount of money just by buying this year versus next year. So add those extra components in when you're explaining that to your data-driven buyer that really wants to know why it makes sense to buy now. Some buyers are saying, well, I think my rents are going to go down, prices are going to go down, whatever. This is just a chart that shows you the rental rates have been going up and down consistently with the home prices, which kind of makes sense. Mortgage rate stuff. I think you could talk yourself blue in the face with buyers saying, well, 30 years ago, mortgage rates were super high, people were still buying houses. But it doesn't really resonate with people that are looking at buying a house, who have experienced mortgage rates in the 3s and 4s over the last few years. So I think this chart might be helpful a little bit. Maybe it's helpful for giving some context to say, just because we're going to have higher interest rates doesn't mean the world's going to fall apart, because people will still buy houses. And so this gives them historical data. But I think it is hard to try to convince a buyer that interest rates, they should buy now because interest rates could go up and it will harm them. They're either ready to buy or they're not, regardless of the interest rates. I just don't know if interest rates is chart that shows the number of houses sold by interest rate makes no difference whether it was at 9%, 8%, 7% over the last 30 years. We still sold about, it had no impact on home sales. There's no correlation between the number of units sold per thousand people per capita at all. It's interesting. Like 78, we had huge interest rates, sold just as many houses in 2013 per capita. So it's just not a big deal. Yeah.
Because it's all relative to the economy?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, just like in the earlier, you were showing the total number of active or properties on the market compared to the solds, and even that number pretty much stayed consistent. I remember when we had 36,000 homes for sale,
Right.
down to today, we're still selling pretty much as many houses.
That's right. Right. We're actually selling less houses. That's what's interesting. We're going to start selling less houses, which is weird. You would think. So we've all been thinking, gosh, once this inventory goes up, it'll be great because we'll sell a lot more houses. I'm not sure that that's the case. So we've got a chart that will talk about that. It's perplexing to me. Days on market. Let's talk about that a little bit. So here's the days on market, trend over since 2008. You've seen that sharp moving down in 2012, and it's been really low since. And here's the chart that talks about the average days on market over the last 50 years, and what kind of seller's market it's been. So you'll see on page 23, a normal seller's market, 60 days on market. Another normal seller's market in the 90s, 50 days on market. And now we've got this 25 days on market. We're going to go to 50 days. Okay? We're going to go to 50 days. And then we may go to 70 days. So start putting that into your mind and start being able to kind of tenderize your sellers with that as well. They need to know that we're going to increase days. This is a great chart to show them that their house may not sell in 20 days because the market's changing. Let's just do another look at that. This is the one where we're actually selling fewer houses. So if you take a look at the inventory of homes here on the left-hand side, 85 to 20, you'll see, and I'm on page 24 for you over here. You'll see that we had like 20,000 homes and all the way up to 30,000 homes, like what Chad was mentioning, and then we get down to 5,000. And then we've got this population in the middle growing. Well, the inventory of active homes per 1,000 people living in Denver, this is what it looks like. So we've got normal seller's market, 5 homes per 1,000 people. Right now, our inventory is more like 1.5 homes per 1,000 people. So the inventory is less and less and less, and we're actually, probably going to sell a few less homes this year, even though our inventory is a little higher this year. Weird. Economic forecast for net migration, not a lot's changed there. A lot of people still coming into Colorado. And then just a little bit more detailed graph on that too on the next page. This one can be helpful. I think this is another reason that I'm talking about the page 27. So we got the tight inventory, we have people moving in, but we also have this huge population of people, all the millennials. And a lot of them don't have their own places yet. Like very many of them don't. And a lot of them want to have their own places. And so if they can afford these places, they're going to start buying homes. And so as we see maybe prices go down and get a little bit more realistic for wages, I think we've got a big pent-up supply there that will also help kind of kick things off, which is just sets us up a little bit differently too, I think, than a lot of other markets where we've got such a large population of millennials. 849,000. That's a lot. Remember when all the millennials moved downtown? Where are they moving now when they start their families? We went out of town. It's not as cool to be downtown anymore, right? And let me just tell you, that I'll regret it. We all did that, right? A lot of us did that. I did that. Regretted it totally. I used to have a house in Ute Hills. That was my first house. Should have kept it. Should still be living there because the lot is, worth more than the house we paid for out in the burbs. Anyway, here's some other construction trends. Just more stuff of like how we're set up a little bit differently in Colorado. We haven't overbuilt yet. And let me talk about this one. I think this is a good issue. Wage versus home price growth. So we've heard a lot about affordability, and it's not affordable, it's not affordable. And it's not. The reality is it's not. And that's probably why we don't have a little bit more home ownership. Because if we're, especially in the markets of the smaller homes, those are the ones that are increasing massively in appreciation. You know, maybe the whole market did 8 or 9% appreciation in the year, but some of the smaller homes was more like 11%, 12%, 14%, right? Especially in certain areas. And if you're a millennial or whoever that just has a job and is trying to buy a house, your wages are not keeping in pace with home prices. So we'll see that perhaps the demand will soften a little bit for houses, and then maybe we'll get a little bit more price change and maybe a little more inventory. But I don't think so. I think because of the influx, because of the lack of construction, because of the millennial population, all those factors, the job growth here, we're going to still see a lot of demand for homes. So this affordability thing is going to be an issue until wages catch up. You guys hear that from your buyers? Like this can't afford this, can't that. Do you think that was a factor in September, October? What's your guess? What happened then? Who has the answer?
People stopped looking because they were tired of getting beat out on things. I think a lot of people just stopped.
Just gave up.
Yeah, and they should have bought. You know, they should have stuck with it, but I think that happened a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the trend over the last 4 years has kind of been slow, just in August, September, October.
Yeah, of course. It is every year. Yeah, every year I get a call from brokers going, "What's going on?" That happened in 2017, and I said, "Nothing's going on. It's July. More houses hit the market in July because the people finally got out of school and got their to-do list done, got the house fixed up, put it on the market, and now everybody's house is on the market, and a lot of buyers are on vacation. So you got a lot more supply, a little less demand. So it's going to be different, right? So, but this year was different. This year kind of did it.
A little longer, huh?
A little bit longer.
I think the elections has something to play with it too.
Oh, yeah.
Terms.
Yep. I think so
State
too.
elections, which other coming in this year.
Yeah, the economy was very different. Yep, I think the stock market fluctuation, especially in higher-end homes, because people that buy higher-end homes, they can choose to buy one whenever they want. They don't have to, buy that home right now, like somebody other markets. They can be a lot more choosy. It's a big decision, and they'll choose to hold off for a year after the stock market settles down. So I think that's part of it too. Yeah. I think the election, the way the market was reading to us, showings and things like that was very similar to 16. So the elections could have made a big impact. Kavanaugh hearings could have made a big impact. Right? That was. Think about it this way: we have 5,000 houses to choose from, in a month, and you have just 100 people that just decided not to go house shopping that weekend because they were really interested in following something on TV, the politics or whatever, and they just chose not to go shopping that weekend. It's a big deal, isn't it? It's a small amount of people, but if you only have 5,000 homes, it's a big impact. So I think it could legitimately be a lot of that kind of politics. Just can't stand to be away from the TV, I guess. We listened to the Kavanaugh hearings in the car on the way to Virginia, and it was the best book on tape ever. Because you couldn't see their faces, and it was like, oh my God, I wonder what kind of face is he crying? Is what's going on? We couldn't see them, so it was so fascinating. All right, here's the so Patty Silverstein's forecast for our actual existing home sales. This is what is forecasted for 2019. So a few less homes sold in 2019. And if you guys have been working with builders, they're kind of panicking right now, aren't they? They're trying to unload their inventory as well. So that's going to make a little bit of Here is the vacancy rate and the rental rates. So you can see how our rental rates over the last 2000, from 2000 all the way to now have really, really climbed. And the vacancy rates obviously have gone down to support that climb. They're probably going to come up a little bit. This might be, in this chart over here, this might be a good indication. How many of you own rentals? Okay, so maybe you've got a renewal coming up this spring. This might be the spring where you don't increase it. Really, I mean, or maybe increase it a little bit, because I've talked to a lot of property managers lately, and they're kind of making the decision they don't want to. They've seen some people walk on a $50 a month increase, so they don't really want to like push anyone out. So that might be a good opportunity to just keep that rate the way it is. I think we're still going to get the rented. We might need to be a little bit more aggressive on how we price this, price ourselves. Okay, this is a good chart because it really shows us what happens when the market changes. And what we did with this is we took one particular neighborhood. So if you guys are looking back here, it's page 34. We took Aurora North. And we wanted to show what happens all the way through kind of this changing market cycle. So if you look at the top, it's from 84 to 96. And you can see there on the house prices, we're kind of going up. And then we come down into this blue, which is the fall. Number of foreclosures are increasing. We've got some distressed homes, days on markets peaking, and months of inventory starts to go up. And then as we fall, then we get down to kind of the bottom there, and then we mark our way up. One thing I want to point out in that section is, if you look at the downside of these 2 years, it was 88, 89, and 90, 3 years. In 90, it went back, started going back up. It's very fast, it starts to go back up, but it comes down hard sometimes. The bottom section is the most recent recession, which is 2012. And what we saw, or 6, covered it well. What we saw is the same kind of shape, right? The prices came, the properties came down in price. We had more foreclosures. We saw more months of inventory, and then everything starts to go up again. Very, very similar. So as our market changes here, it's probably going to be the same sort of curve. Same, it doesn't have to be. But this at least shows the last 2 market cycles, so it's very consistent. So that gives you some comfort, I think, to know that, what might happen. A couple other charts here that are for the really data-driven people that really like this stuff. So these are Lon's. Lon loves this. The top chart here is for the months of inventory. And the top is home appreciation, and the bottom is months of inventory. What these charts are really designed to show you, and there's some explanations on the sheets ahead of them, is really the supply and demand and how the fundamentals of supply and demand actually work in the real estate market. It's not perfect, we can't predict everything, but to give your buyers and sellers some comfort that, hey, this has happened before, and this is what it looks like when it happens. This is how the supply of homes impacts the prices, and vice versa. So you'll see that in the bottom chart, we've got the months of inventory. So we've got this big price appreciation. It's going to follow with some months of inventory increase after that, which is going to drive everything down again. So it's fun to look at that and the days on market one together. Both very similar there. Last one is just a kind of a breakdown of the different cities, different neighborhoods. We have have you guys seen our price change map? So we have a map that in neighborhood shows how its price change, what the days on market is, what the month of inventory is. And then we took that last year and turned it around and made it a days on market map, which is pretty cool. So like a bright green would be super fast days on market, and a red would be a neighborhood where properties hang for a while. So those are great to have for like open houses. We've got those poster size if you want those. They're pretty cool. We update them quarterly. So if you're looking for that, let me know and I'll send it to you. If you want to look at the current one, just the days on market one, just go to our website. It's on there. You can find it on there. Take a look at it. A couple things about rentals. Here's your investor buyer. Same thing as the first-time home buyer. We're just doing it with investors. It still makes sense to buy an investment property. This is a great chart to kind of prove that. So on page 42, you've got the average sales price per unit of apartments built in these different decades, and what the sales prices are by year. So you can see who bought a rental in 2005, 2006. I did. I bought a couple. It kind of sucked. Because I bought them thinking I was going to be able to sell them in 2 years. That was my first mistake. Like, I'm going to buy a rental and sell it in 2 years, basically. And of course, in 2 years, when I bought it in 2005, that was the problem. So I held on to it. But look where it is now. You know? It's kind of golden. If I was a broker actively out there, I think the number one thing I'd be looking at for, one of the things I'd be looking at, since I'm paying college right now for my kids, I have 3 kids, and got a senior in high school, the other 2 are already in college, and this next one goes next year. So by the way, send me title work, because we really But if I were a broker, there's a lot of people like me. And somebody needed to tell me back in 2005, 2004, to not just buy a couple rentals, but to buy a ton of rentals, so that I could actually pay for college education that way. Because it is the easiest, best way to pay for college education. When you can refinance one of your rentals and pay for your daughter's school, it's like glorious. And then they're just paying, the tenant's paying. See, it's fantastic. So use that as go after those people with little kids that are just wanting to think they're going to have enough to save for college one day, because we thought we would, and we didn't, because it's just too expensive. It's outrageous. That's all. That's it. So I'll hang around if you guys have any questions for me. Love to chat with you.